This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, shkayach everyone for being here. Tremendous chus to be able to be at Landers. A tremendous mazel tov for Shalom. Thank you. Wow, Baruch Hashem, Be'ez Shalom. And the simcha should be contagious. Everyone should catch it from you. Take the mask off and let everyone catch it from you. Everyone should become chasanim. Everyone should become kalas. Be'ez Hashem Yitzbarach. Everyone, right time, right place. Really, what's more important is the right person. You know, when you're young, there's the when and there's the who. There's the how, but that's your parents' problem. But and eventually yours when you marry a few kids. But there's the when and there's the who, and then there's the how. Right? So when you're young, sometimes the when is the most important question, but it's not as important as the who. I'm telling you. And sometimes when you sacrifice the when for the whom, it's good. So you got to leave it to Hashem to decide. But the Eibush Hashem, it should be as soon as possible for everyone. You should be Zaycha. Like somebody once told me, you should go to the chuppah with a light heart and heavy pockets. Okay. Of bracha and atzlach. So, somebody once said life is like an invitation. You know why life is like an invitation? Because an invitation is, here's a half a matzah. Okay. Sorry, Dizzy. At least for a boy, when's the first time your name is on invitation? Right, you're bar mitzvah, right? Well, most people don't send out invitations to a bris, and right, they don't know your name. Good point. Good point, Shloim. You're right. They don't know your name yet. Right.
Birthday party.
So, so where's your name by a bris? Let's say your name is Baruch. Right? So, the mitzvah boy, your name is smack in the middle of the invitation. We'll leave the rest of the invitation out, right? Yeah, the mitzvah boy, your name is smack in the middle of the invitation. It feels so good, you come to school and you give out your invitation and you're all excited. And really, bar mitzvah kid, it's all about you. You go to the store and you buy your Borsalino and you get your tefillin and you didn't get a Borsalino by your bar mitzvah? No, huh? Okay, me neither. And anyway, and you get your whatever, and really, it's all about you, and it's all about the bar mitzvah kid. Everyone's oohing and awing, and he gets up. Then what does he have to say by the bar mitzvah, right? Well, what does he say, already? His father tells him to say, right? He starts the pshetel, and then they sing in right away, and then he goes. And once a bar mitzvah kid, he went like this. And now I want to thank my parents for their amazing devotion and can't read my mom's handwriting. Okay. So it's all about you, right? But life goes on, and you know exactly when it's coming. It's not like you have to date to get to your bar mitzvah.
It's not accomplishment.
Right. But a kid feels good about himself, and he walks home with all those presents and everything else. The 10 sets of Mishnah Brura, right? He says, why don't you give back 9? He says, I didn't finish all the 10 sets yet. Okay. And then finally, right? Then a couple of years down the pike. Okay, this is a very good eraser, by the way. A couple of years, that's very hard to misplace. A couple of years down the pike, your name again is on the invitation, but this time you got to go through it. Shatchanim, you got to go through the dating process and all the worries. Is she going to say yes? Is she going to say no? And the one you want doesn't want you, and the one the other way around, the one that wants you, you don't want them, and your parents and your grandparents. And you got to go through and you got to deal with a father-in-law and a mother-in-law, and you finally make it to the day of the chasana. I don't mean to discourage anyone here. But at that point, where's your name, right? And now you're sharing it. It's Baruch and Rachel, It's like, double, like somebody once told me when he went to Eretz Yisrael after he got married. He said, how would you describe the difference between being there as a Bachar and going afterwards? He said, double the money, half the fun. That's what he said. Okay, that's an attitude. We have to work on him a little bit. Okay. So the Maisa, down the pike you're getting married, and finally you work so hard to get there. Now, Rabbi side, hang on, fasten your seatbelts, my friends. You have children, and then times time you have children to get married, and you go through the sleepless nights your parents go through, and then finally, right? And then you got to pay for it. You know what I mean? You got to pay for the wedding. It's like really geschmack. You know that? See, there's a guy, he won the Powerball, $50 billion, and they asked him, what are you going to do with it? He said, I married off 10 kids, I have to pay back my chaydas. He said, what are you going to do with the rest? He says, the rest will have to wait till I win again. What should I do? So now, So now, and after what you go through to get to that point, where are you? Now you're on the bottom, you know what I mean? You know, Baruch and Rachel, you know, so-and-so, together with Gabriel and you know, Chana, that you're having an issue with and talking with, and like your kid's name is up here, 3 times as hard. Now your name is all the way on the bottom. And then, if you ever make it, if you ever make it, maybe we should all make it, and you're Zeicher and marry of grandchildren. You know what you got to go through in your life to marry of grandchildren? And then where are you? You're on the other side of the invitation. You know what I mean? Okay, you got to look on the other side. It says, V'gam anu. You know, we too, by the way. You know, us also. It said to me, you're a V'gam anu person. You know, we are also, and the proud grandparents. And then your name is shared by, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like, so basically, this is the story of life. The story of the invitation is the story of life. The longer it gets harder, and you get less credit for it, which is, so enjoy it when you can, right? Rabbi Aaron said being a chassan is the best time. You don't have the daigus of parnasa yet, and you can sit and learn with the greatest geschmack, which you were doing beforehand anyway, Shalom. So, okay. So this fellow comes to me after Purim, and he says like this. This is what he said. He said, I came to bring you Mishleich Manas. I felt so bad you weren't home. I said, why? I wanted to show my Akar Satayv. That was nice of him. Then he goes on to say, you see, I was on your block anyway to deliver Mishleich Manas to my cousin, and I had an extra one in my car, and I passed your house, and I was like, he obviously doesn't realize what he's saying. You know what I mean? I would have never come to you to bring you Mishleich Manas, but I happened to be on your block, and I happened to have an extra one, and I happened to pass your house. It would have been so nice that I could say, wow, I came for you, you weren't there. Nothing like brutal honesty, okay? But then again, there are those clarifying moments. I'll never forget, somebody once called me up. He said, you know, I'm making a big event tonight. I said, yeah, sure, Baruch Hashem. He says, listen, I need a good speaker. And that's the reason I'm calling you. Right. Because I need a good one. I said, I understand. No, you see, I know your son used to play keyboard, and he told me you have speakers in the garage. And I need a good speaker. He didn't mean the speaker that speaks. He meant the speaker, you know, the amplifier, right. Okay. So, it's a different world this week from last week. It's a world before Reb Chaim and after Reb Chaim, right? We kind of slipped a little bit more into the real world, to Elam HaSheker. And when I think about Reb Chaim Zechron Levracha, it's very hard to say the word Zechron Levracha, but he kind of bridged both worlds. So, you know, there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that a lot of these stories, I'm sure you've heard many times, but there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, officially, that before you go into a bathroom, you malachim accompany you, angels accompany you, and you turn around to the malachim and you say, please wait outside, I'm a human being, and it doesn't pass you to come in here. You say, Yischabdu, Mischabad, and there's a whole nusach to say. We don't say it, Mishnah Berurah says, because we don't think we're on such a high level, at least most of us are not, that malachim follow us around. So we don't say this whole thing, malachim, please stand outside. So somebody once came to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zechron Levracha, and said, I feel that malachim follow me. He's looking at him, yeah. So should I say this tefillah? So Reb Chaim said, what are you asking me? Ask the malachim that are following you. Why'd you ask me for? If you're going to ask them, right? You know what it means to be real?
You could have said, I don't see any.
Okay, right, could have, yeah. He often asked his wife after eating which bracha chayna should make, and she would say, what's the shayla? No, he just didn't remember what he ate. Okay? And he was very makbid to eat lunch with his wife. We're going to get back to that. It's interesting, when he was a young bacher and he was learning in Petach Tikva, and he was not known as a bacher to be someone with a good head. I think it's important that it gets out. That was discussed, by the way, by the Hespedim. Get to that in a moment. What was an interesting story is that his mother, who of course was a Steipler's Rebbitzin, used to send food with him, whatever food. In those days, that's suggest of food. It wasn't today. And he would forget to eat it. On the way home, he would say, what do I do? He would say, if my mother's going to ask me if I ate it, I can't lie. So he'd have to eat the food or give it away, to make sure the food was eaten. It was always like one of his big struggles where he was. Do you know where Reb Chaim Kanievsky's father-in-law was? Rabbi Yashin. You know what he got for his wedding? Okay? He got a set of Mishnah Berurah. Yeah. Yes, the Bar Mitzvah boy gets 10 sets of Mishnah Berurah, and he didn't get a shas because Rabbi Yashin couldn't afford to buy him one. So as a present, he bought him a set of Mishnah Berurah, and it wasn't the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah. It wasn't the new one with the English translation. It was the You know what it was? He didn't get a dira. What he got this was his nadin. He got rent for 2 years. Got 2 years of rent for a dira. That was very big. And the dira that he had a common kitchen, didn't have their own kitchen. It may have not even had its own bathroom. There was like a common bathroom on the floor. I don't mean on the floor, I mean on that floor. Okay? And then somehow Koil Chazanish had an extra dira, and the government would take away diras that weren't used, so they moved him in over there. And when they moved him in, they suddenly had this extra year of dira money that was part of his dowry, because they got this free dira. So he told his wife he wanted to buy her a coat, because she did not get married with a new coat. I don't know if she had an old one either, because there was no money for a new coat. And she insisted that they should buy a shas instead. And she managed still not without a coat. I tried to explain the world that they were in. I think this is important for us to internalize and understand it, and then to apply it to our world. You know that at 4 o'clock at the Netzacham, exactly when the sun rose, and they did this for 45 years. This is what the sun said by the Levaya, for 45 years. And I heard it from someone once who saw it. The people used to come, there were days we were able to get closer in, years ago. And it wasn't so famous. But this is what they did every night for 45 years straight, maybe more than that. As soon as the sun came up, Netzacham, Reb Chaim would say the Berchas HaShachar from Shleis HaNegosh, and she would answer Amen. And then she would say the Berchas HaShachar, and he would answer Amen. Try to understand that experience. As the sun rose in Bnei Brak for years, somebody once came to Reb Chaim and asked him about toiveling the thing for the mixer, the bit like the bzz. So he asked, what is this for? He said, well, when you make challah, like, he says, well, why don't people use their hands? What do you need a mixer for? And they went to the Rebbitzin. The Rebbitzin said, why in the world would I want to use a machine if I can use my hands to bake challah? A little bit different than, like I told you, how do you know Mr. Clean is a man, not a lady, right? Only a man cleans with his hands folded like this, right? So I heard this story from Reb Leibel Williger, the Rosh Koil and Tarvadas. He heard it from Rebbitzin El Yashiv, which would be Reb Chaim's shviger. She used to wake up at 1 o'clock, and she spent an hour preparing the coffee for her husband, for Rebbe Yashiv. She would go to sleep at 2 o'clock, and then he would learn from 2 in the morning. From 2 till the morning. That's what Rabbi Yasha did all his life. As they said, when he was nifter, people started naming their babies after him, Yesod Shalom. Then they stopped, because the babies would wake up at 2 o'clock and they wouldn't go to sleep till the morning. That's what they say. Anyway, so they once brought her a thermos bottle. Her kids, a new thing. And they said, here's a thermos bottle, Mom. She said, what am I going to do with it? She said, well, you don't have to get up at 1 o'clock. It took an hour to make the coffee. You could kerosene stove. You had to milk the cows. I don't know. Grow the coffee beans. I don't know what took an hour. So you make the coffee at 9 o'clock. You can go to sleep and just put it. She goes, take that out of my house. She doesn't want that thermos bottle in her house. And she gave 3 reasons why. One reason is she doesn't want technology in her house. She doesn't feel it's invasive, the technology, right? It wasn't even a 5G thermos bottle. It was a regular thermos bottle. And second reason she says is she wanted the schus of preparing the coffee. And the third reason she said was because if she's up for an hour preparing the coffee, she knows her husband has to wake up. Just think about the mindset. When they originally got married, so she was the daughter, Rebbe Yashiv Shver, his father-in-law, was Rebbe Aryeh Levine, the famous tzaddik of Yerushalayim. When they got married, Rebbe Yashiv, that was really the war years. So they lived in a small dira, and there was no way that the Chas and Kala could have their own dira. So they sectioned off part of their dira for the Chas and Kala. Sectioning off meant curtain, and that was their house. And they sat there by breakfast. It's Shavah Brachas. He's sitting there, and his shviger brought him bread and a tomato. And he asked her, "You always have tomatoes?" We never have tomatoes. Can't afford tomatoes. I think my parents gave away their bread so we can have a tomato. So at least, we're not talking about cream cheese. We're not talking about ordering these fancy breakfasts that come on the first morning from where. And she was like, so he said, forget it, I can't eat this. So they they thought of some excuse to send the tomato back in. And finally, they sat there looking at each other. And she said, "Why don't you just go to Koil? What's the point?" So he went to Koil. He was there the regular full Koil day, the full Sheva Brachas. Chaim was there the day of his wedding. Somebody came to him. "You getting married tonight?" He said, "Why?" "No, we have another hour." And when Rabbi Yoshu's Rebbetzin was sick, /forward 70 years later, she said, by her shiva, right before she died, she didn't say it by her shiva, but right before she passed away, she said to her husband, "By the first Sheva Brachas you went to Koil, but the second Sheva Brachas I want you to go to Koil also." She called her shiva the second Sheva Brachas. That's how they viewed life. Rabbi Levine himself, when he got married, so he said in the Yichud room, he told her, he didn't have a red cent to his name. So he told her, I give you a present. The present is that whenever we have an argument, you're right. He once told it to a young man. I guess he didn't say it the right way. He said it to his kala in the Yichud room. She said, "You're starting up already." That's what he said. So don't use that. Okay? So I'll tell you an interesting story that I have personally with Rebbetzin Kanievsky, which is interesting. I went to Eretz Yisrael. I went to get a bracha for my daughter to become a kala. She wasn't old, but it was. And I was there with a friend of mine. And we couldn't get into her Chaim, but everyone said that she gives the brachas. And she came by, and so we went over to her, and to my friend, also asked for a bracha, his daughter should become a kala, and to my friend, she said he should learn Masechtas Kinam, which, as you know, is the hardest Masechta Mishnayos. It has to do with birds that get mixed up, the chatas and the oil, it's fun. And me, she said, I should learn Chavetz Chaim every day. And he said to me, "How come I have to learn Masechtas Kinam and you got Chavetz Chaim?" And then she also said the kala should also learn. And then she stops for a second. She goes, "But the kala is learning already, Chavetz Chaim, right?" I don't know. Then she tells me, "Chatan kvar hagia habayta. The chassan came home already." I don't know. So when I got home from Eretz Yisrael, I asked the kala, "You have to be learning Chavetz Chaim?" She said, "Yeah, I started 2 weeks ago. We started this whole thing." I said, "Okay." Then they called up the Rebbe Shidduch, and it turned out that the boy had just come home from Eretz Yisrael the day before. All right, so I think the Ruach HaKodesh that was in that house wasn't Ruach HaKodesh. It was what's in our hearts. We have a sense of emes, but it gets covered up because of all the other things that we do or look at or say. And by them it was clear. If somebody had a problem with his foot, Reb Chaim would say, "Learn Perek Ketzad Regel." If there was a baby that was a wedding, and the baby wasn't a baby anymore, so Reb Chaim said he should learn Perek Ha'or V'Haroitev, which literally is the hide, and everything was, he saw the Torah as the blueprint of the world. So the famous story that Reb Chaim is sitting there, and he would finish Kol HaTorah Kula every single year. So on Shana Yaberes, he had an extra Adar. So that's when he was Mechaber a Sefer, usually on something that was like not the norm. So one year he wrote a Sefer on the halachos of grasshoppers. You know that there are some grasshoppers that are mutter b'achilas, Sfaradim eat it, Ashkenazim don't. Sorry guys, Ashkenazim don't. They say with ketchup mayonnaise, it's really, but anyway, Al Kapanim.
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah, it's a school that are going to diet, yeah. But there's different simanim as to which grasshoppers are mutter, which are not, right? There's sugyas in the Schachter Chulin. So he's learning with his chavrus, and they're trying to figure out what the Gemara means. With the wings long, with the legs long, and all of a sudden there's like boing, this grasshopper pops in. And Rabbi Chaim said, "Oh, see like this." Showing what the simon is, and it pops back out. And the chavrus is like there with his mouth open, and he goes, "You okay?" Because the grasshopper just popped out. He goes, "Yeah." If you're sitting and learning, so that's what happens, right? In other words, if that's what's on your mind, then that's what happens, right? That the bria goes after how you're trying to learn, goes after what you're saying. The bat will say once, "I don't know, I sat down with my chavrusa and a pizza came flying through the window, and the guy told me what's on your mind is that's what comes." Okay. I want to try to put it all together because I think that it supports. So you all know the famous story, I've said it many times, that Reb Chaim's father, the Steipler, he married the sister of Chazonish, and when he came to the date, they sat down on either side of the table, and the Steipler fell asleep. When you fall asleep during a date, the girl could possibly take that the wrong way. I'm not 100% sure. Some say that he said hamapel, and then she came in and he went, "No, and like you have to sleep a little bit, so you'll have to." So she said, "I know, he's he fell asleep on me, or he said, I'm up, or he has to go to sleep. What's this? So the Chazanish says, what's with you? So he explained that it was a 10-hour train ride. So he figures he'll be up for 24 hours learning because he's going to sleep those 10 hours. When he got to the train, he had a shiloh with shatness on the seat. So he wound up standing. So he was up for 24 hours and stood another 10 hours. So at this point, he was a little bit tired. So the Chazanish says, just marry him. So they say there was a bacher that he asked the Steipler once on Purim if it's true that you fell asleep during their first date. And the Steipler told him, I wasn't the first one. Know anyone else? So I know people fall asleep during the breakfast or supper table, but Shabbos table, they don't fall asleep. They have a Elias Neshama, their Neshama goes up. But some people, after the Shalom, really. Notice this king couldn't fall asleep. He just couldn't fall asleep. And they went and all the people, insomnia experts from all over the world, they tried every sleep medicine in the world, didn't work. The Yidla came and said, let me do it again, a real Hungarian shalt, a mamish, the real thing. And the schmaltz is, somebody said this, the shalt was really good because his shviger makes the shalt. And when she pours the schmaltz into the shalt, she says Tehillim. And this week she was up to Kuf Yotes. So the schmaltz just kept pouring, kept coming. So, he said that, so the king eats the child and he's out like a light. So the king wakes up after, he says, all you big scientists, you couldn't get me to sleep, and this yid, what's this? So they took the child into the main FBI office for analysis, and they came back and said, did you figure out how it puts you to sleep? They said, yeah, we couldn't figure out how you were able to wake up eventually afterwards. That we couldn't figure out. Okay. So they said they once asked Reb Chaim, this same bacher asked Reb Chaim, what do you think your father meant when he said these words that I'm the one that I wasn't the first one? He says, well, you know what the first one was that fell asleep during a date, Adam Arishan, right? Hashem put him to sleep, and then. So what does it mean? It means a certain resigning to the situation. I know I made decisions in getting married, but I also know you're the one that assigns my life, and I'm going to deal with it. I'm not going to start thinking it. I should have. I shouldn't have. This is it. This is who I am. Right? What do we say by Marav? We say the nismach. What is the nismach? We should say the sameach. What's the nismach? Nismach is passive. I can't wave a wand and say I'm going to have such simcha when I'm learning. It doesn't work that way. I can try to do everything right, but the nismach, I have to back into it. You have to give it to me. It has to happen. Okay, so you get the general idea. We, of course, don't have apartments with shared bathrooms. And we, of course, have presents to give the chassan and kala. And we, of course, have all these things that they didn't have. Reb Shlomo Zalman said in his time, for supper, there were 8 kids, and his mother had 1 hard-boiled egg, which she cut in 8 pieces. That was the main dish. At least they didn't have to worry about their cholesterol. So, but we're so much happier than they are, right? Are we? How come we're not producing Reb Chaim's and Reb Shlomo Zalman's and the Rebbe Yashiv's? So listen to me, I think this is important. Every generation has their custom-made nisyonos, and every person has his custom-made nisyonos. And every single day of our lives, there are custom-made nisyonos and challenges and anxiousness. They had theirs, and we have ours. We have plenty of obstacles to overcome, just like they did. And not everybody in the times of the Steipler, unfortunately in Yerushalayim, Rebbe Yashiv said, I think out of a class of 40, there were maybe 6 that remained frum. Between the hunger, people dying of hunger, and the wars and the Haskalah. Most people did not overcome this Nisayon, this major poverty. There were very few that found such a simchas achayim deep in their lives. And the same is true for us. We have our challenges. They're different challenges. But we have our challenges. And the simcha, the ruach HaKodesh, comes from those challenges. Right? Zeresh, when she saw that Haman is in the dumps, all of a sudden she said, you're done for. Klal Yisrael is like this. When they're down, they're down, they're down. When they go up, they're up. They're nimshlu la'afar, and they're compared to the Kaychavim. When they go to the afar, they go all the way down into the afar. When they go up to the stars, you're finished. That was her encouraging words, her loving words to her husband Haman. So I heard a word from Melech Bidum. He said a beautiful word. I've got to said it from whom? He said, Klal Yisrael is compared to offer to the Kechavim. The way we get to the Kechavim is first going through the offer. We have to have our challenges. We have to feel like we're being stepped on. Right? Hashem says to Aaron, Kach lecha egel ben bakar lachatas. And Aaron says, I'm embarrassed. The egel, that's the chet egel. No, the whole avodah has to come through. It's the Zerah Shimshon says, Aaron's avodah was based on the chet egel. It proved that he didn't really sin by the chet egel. But you have to make mistakes. You have to blow it, and then out of the ashes you rise to your challenges. Right? Ramosha says, you just finished the Shivas Yinei HaMaluyim. Whoa, take a break. No, now let's go back to the Chet HaEgel. Yeah, that's how life goes. So let me tell you something, Rabbi say. I once heard a scary thought. Rabbi Chanan said by the Levi of the Chavetz Chaim that it says in the Zohar when tzaddikim pass away, they honor them by putting them on a bezdin, that they should judge the people down here. So he said, the Chavetz Chaim just passed away. I would be really careful with Lashon Hara now, because he's on the bezdin. So I'm saying, so Rabbi Chaim's on the bezdin now, so we should be careful with what? You want me to finish Kol HaTorah Kula? You want me to do what Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky did when it was Erev Pesach, when Shabbos is Erev Pesach, there's a Shaila on Friday, do you need a Siyam B'chayris or not? Because it's not really Erev Pesach. So Rabbi Chaim made his Siyam HaShas on Friday, but in case you need a Siyam the next day, so Friday night he learned the whole Bava Basra. You want me to do that? I don't even know if I would turn the pages that I would make it in time. Right? You know the famous story. Somebody came to him and asked him, is there a problem with getting the aliyah of the Teichacha, where the Torah gives the curses? He says, don't do it. I once saw a terrible tragedy. He says, what happened? This guy got the aliyah of the Teichacha, and then his father-in-law inherited a huge amount of wealth and took him into the business, and he went out of learning. Don't. He became a multi-billionaire. Don't do it. Don't take that aliyah. Like to him, that was the biggest tragedy in the world, right? He didn't know the names of the streets that were near him. But somebody told me when he was a young man, Reb Chaim, he asked him a shayla where a certain thing is, and Reb Chaim stopped in the street and he was like turning pages in the air, and he said, it's not in Bavli, it's not in Yerushalmi, it's not in Medrash, it's not in Sefro, it's not in Sefri, it's not in Tosefta, it's not in the Zohar. He learned Kabbalah, by the way, also. It's not in Zohar, it's a Tikkun Zohar, which is like a thing that came out after the Zohar. Right? He like just scrolled through Shas. No computer, by the way. No different world. Now, who's his Mamal Makan? Who's going to take the place of Reb Chaim? Reb Chaim was not a Rosh Hashiva. He wasn't a Rav. What was he? Yeah, what was he? He was just Torah. Think about that for a moment. I think this is important. Rabbi Yaakov Meir Schachter once said to a bacher that was struggling, he said, I blew it. After what I did, after what I saw, after what I did, there's no chance. I said to Hashem 1,000 times, I'm going to do tshuva, it doesn't work, I'm gone. So Rabbi Yaakov Meir Schachter said, I'm going to tell you something, okay? No, Rebbe, you don't know what my Yetzer Hara is. He says, he gave him this analogy. We're a wagon driver and a horse, okay? The neshama is the driver. The guf is the horse. You're blaming your horse for acting like a horse. Your guf, it has times. Your job is to try to control it. Now, their horse was parked in the barn, okay? But to deal with your horse, don't blame yourself when you have an unruly horse. You know, so the Ukraine, the propaganda is they killed this amount of Russian soldiers, and we killed this amount of Ukrainians. They're not Russians, Ukrainians. They're 18-year-old kids that are being sent into war. You know, just think about that for a moment, right? Nobody knows what's true. What's true is that 29 people were shot in New York City over the weekend. That's true. So I just this hit me that Zelensky was saying, that we destroyed X amount of Russian tanks and X amount of troop carriers and shot down so many planes. And I feel like saying, Mr. Zelensky, Hashem should protect you. But it's irrelevant because even if you took away every single tank that they had, and you took away every plane that Russia had, and you took away every troop carrier that they had, and every artillery shell that they had, they still have nuclear missiles, they still have hypersonic missiles. So, where are you going? And I said to myself, wait a second, that's us. As much as we blew it, as much as we feel my guf blew it, you can't imagine the averis that I did. Your neshama is still there. You can't blow it. The Yetzer Hara can't take that away from you. So it's interesting. I read a report that Republicans are trying to get Democrats to change to Republican. And where are they standing? In gas stations. Why in gas stations? That's why people are getting angry when they see the amount of the gas, right? So you want to get someone when he's upset. You want to get him. The Yetzer Hara wants to get us when we're upset. He wants to get us to... Let's think about this for a moment. So who is the Mamal Malkim of Reb Chaim? Who could possibly learn that way? 8 blot of Gemara a day, and the whole Rambam, and the whole Torah, and the whole Shulchan Aruch, and the Zohar, and all the Kizva Arizal, and he's been doing this. And the answer is, how many people were with the Levaya? Right? More than 10, that was for sure. But apparently somewhere between 750,000 and a million, depending who you ask. But those are the numbers. If every single one of them would commit themselves to an extra 10 minutes of learning, if every single one of us would commit ourselves to 10 minutes, I can't do what Reb Chaim did. But at least let me commit myself to something. So Hashem says, okay, let me put all the pieces together. You all know the famous story that the man came to Reb Chaim after his wife passed away, and he said to him, I want to do something for your wife. He wants to build a school. He wants to build mikvahs all over Eretz Yisrael. I want to do something great. So Reb Chaim told him to learn a Schachter. So he said, you don't understand. I have a lot of money. I'm talking about buildings. I'm talking about institutions. Oh, you have a lot of money. Oh, no, so learn a Mishnah. Was he realistic? You know what he once told a boy that came to him and started crying, and he asked him, why are you crying? He said, I stutter, and I'm going to have to get up there and say my bracha and read the Haftarah. So Reb Chaim told him, I want you to take a doll, and every day talk to the doll. Tell the doll all your problems, and then practice the Haftarah and the brachas, goes without Shem Malchus. Years later, this came out as a standard study, by the way, in dealing with... Because you get nervous, that's why you're stuttering. You're scared, what is this person looking at me? How is he viewing me? Is he judging me? But you're talking to the doll, you can let your imagination go free. So was he realistic? He was as realistic as anyone else in the world. When Reb Chaim first started, he used to learn upstairs in his shul, and there was a yeshiva downstairs in the basement. And the boys used to come up all the time and just walk in his house, walk out. He'd talk to him, schmooze with him. That's how I went. And he would start learning, start writing a swarm. Somebody would ask him a question. He would start again from go. Somebody once came in. He said, it's impossible to do it this way. So he said, I'm going to rent you a special room, and you're going to have a special office. He said, no. Because this way he starts to learn. Somebody interrupts him. You're right. Okay. What bracha do you make on cornflakes? Okay, you're right. And then he says, where was I up to? So I start again. I have to rethink. If nobody interrupted me, I would never rethink. So if I made a mistake, I would continue going, right? I would continue going off. He took the interruptions of his life and turned it around. They said, so there's the famous story of Yankel Galinsky, famous Maggid, once told Reb Chaim that I am, this I heard, but there's an appendix to the story which I never heard, an epilogue to it. Rabbi Yankel Galinsky once told Reb Chaim, I can prove to you I am greater than you. Why? Because every Erev Pesach, you make a siyam and kol kula. Last year, I was by your siyam. And I gave you a bracha, next year you should do it again. And you gave me a bracha, next year I should finish kol kula Erev Pesach. Well, my bracha was fulfilled and yours wasn't. So that proves that I'm greater than you. So Reb Chaim told him, you want to finish kol kula, or you want to finish whatever you have to finish, it's not going to be my brachas, it's not going to be your brachas. It's going to be by you opening a Masechtas brachas. In other words, you do what you have to do, and let the Rabbi Shalom put things into place. I was listening to some of the Espedim. It's fascinating. And you know what they said about the Espedim was so real, so powerful. They said when that Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, his Chabal Sfardim, his brother-in-law, said, when he was a Bachar, he was not the Mitzuyan. He's not the one everybody was looking to marry. He's not the one all these shivas are trying to grab. He was considered like, I don't know, he doesn't have such in-depth thinking, struggling in his learning a little bit. That's what he was. He just kept doing his thing, learning a chazri. When the Chazaynish passed away, he was extremely close. He was very broken. He said it was so hard for him to open a Gemara. His son, Reb Shlomo, was saying when they were children, how they grew up. They slept in the kitchen. The kitchen was the kitchen. It was his learning room. It was his everything. He says, and he would put us to bed, and we played musical Masechtas. Every kid had to say all the names of all the Masechtas. Shnayas, all the names of all the Masechtas. There's how many Shnayas or Masechtas are there? 60 something, I think. And I'm not sure. And brachas, Demai, Peah, Klayim, and okay, the one that gets to Bava Kama gets to say Kriya Shema Lamita first. That was like the big excitement in the house, something like that. He said he played with us until we fell asleep, and then by 1:30 he was already sitting and learning with a chavrusa in the bedroom between all the beds that were around and around. Okay, when his wife passed away, he was very broken. They were a special couple. There was a Shras Hashchina in the house. And he had to fight to get back to where he was. He had to fight to get back to where he was. And he allowed himself, you think it was, he became Reb Chaim because of his struggles. It was the offer that sent him to the Kaychavim. He's always makbid by lunch to wait for his wife. Lunch is the main meal. Never ate if his wife wasn't there, because if I don't eat, she's not going to eat. We can only get to the offer if we get to the stars first. It doesn't happen. So someone said to me, listen, he's 93 years old, 94, you think he was going to live forever? So I told him, the story, they say the guy's walking in the woods, and he says, my candle's going to burn out, my candle's going to go out, my candle's going to go out. And all of a sudden his candle went out, he went, my candle went out, because you kept saying your candle's going to go out. What do you make yourself, what are you surprised about? He said, I know, but I thought I'll be out of the woods by then. Right. Come on, we feel for sure Chaim's going to be in my Mashiach. He's not going to leave us alone here, right? So I know. So the Bible says, you have to take over. You have to take the hardships in your life and you have to apply it. So I want to share with you a story that I saw in the Deer Shoot today. And this fellow writes that, he's going through such hardships you can't imagine. He finally got a new dira, and his daughter suddenly became a kala at the same time, and money pressure was driving him out of his mind, and he finally put it all together, and his wife calls him and says, okay, the painter is here, she wants 1,200 shekel. I don't have 1,200 shekel, I barely have money for the dira. What do we have to paint for? Okay, but also the new furniture. What do we need new furniture for? We have new bedrooms, is that enough? And she goes and he goes, oh, okay, sure, no problem. He's like, bunch some help. And he goes to sleep, and he says, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to daven to Hashem, I'm going to say Tillim, and Eliyahu Navi is going to come to me. He's going to show me where the gold is. I know it. And he davened, and he fell asleep. And he had this dream that he had this terrible toothache. He had this dream that he had a toothache. You ever had a toothache in your dream? And then when you wake up, you realize that's not a dream? He woke up and he had this humongous toothache. And then he said, great, I was ready for Eliyahu Navi to come give me gold. He said he brought me a toothache. So he goes to the dentist and knows how much that's going to cost. So he tells him it's that gold crown, top of your tooth, underneath it's rotten. Because I don't have a red cent to my name. It's probably going to need a root canal and a crown and blah, blah, blah. So, well, I got to take it out because it's infected. So he yanks it out, and this guy's looking at it. You can only say this if you're desperate. He says to the dentist, he says, Doc, could I sell that gold? He laughs. It's like a tiny piece. I know, but he says, it's connected to your tooth. It's not exactly very geschmack, So he says, can I try? You don't know how desperate I am. So the dentist laughs. He opens up a drawer and he says he has a whole stack of them. People just leave here. He says, I'll tell you what, you sell it and I'll give it to you, you will split the profit in half. So he takes it home. He's looking at his wife and saying, what in the world is that? It's people's crowns. Oh my God. You bring it back to the dentist, please? And he tries to polish it. He's not doing very good. And he thinks about a friend of his in Svas who does these little silver miniatures. And he says to her, can I come over to you? He drives up to him, and the guy figures out a way to melt it down and to polish it. To make a long story short, he winds up selling it for a tremendous amount of money. I mean, not tremendous, He wouldn't be one of Putin's friends they have to put sanctions on. He wasn't that millionaire. But it got him over the hurdle. He came back to the dentist. He gave the dentist his half. The dentist was floored, he said, So he said later like this. He says, I thought Eliyahu Navi was going to come show me the gold. Instead, he gives me a toothache. I said, I could have cursed the world out and stormed out of there. You got to have seichel to know. Because sometimes we ask Hashem for things. He says, I'll give it to you. But it comes in a camouflage of a toothache. You have to understand that your offer, your most difficult day, is the source of your biggest bracha. And that's what made these people so great. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu help. And maybe we all take upon ourselves 10 minutes before we go to sleep to learn. You know what I mean? Take, because we're all learning. It's geschmack. That is Medish of your landers is awesome. But just take an extra 5 minutes, an extra 10 minutes, and just try to focus on those 5 minutes and say, I'll do my 5. The other million people that will buy the Levaya will do their 5. And maybe slowly Reb Chaim can, now that he's up there, can open up the doorway and say, guys, enough galus. Have a wonderful week, Rabbi.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.